Hello everybody, and welcome to the first week team builder for the WSS Draft League. I'm Orucs-Oraihc of the Victoria Bells, and I am going to start off, like I always do, by going over my opponent's team, what their threats are, the kind of general trends with the team, and what I think they're going to bring, as well as some of the sample sets that I've put in here. So let's just get straight into it. So we're going to start out by looking at their S tier. Of course, this is Grimmsnarl. They have the G-Max form available if they want it, but most likely it's not going to be a max candidate for this team, especially because they have a lot of other max candidates. It's normally going to be running Light Clay dual screens. That's kind of Grimmsnarl's main support role. It can run dual stab with that. It can run fake out. It can also run something like fake tears. It could run where is it? Thunderwave set as well. Thunderwave is a tricky set. That said, Grimmsnarl is actually not that great for my opponent this week because I have Psychic Terrain and my opponent also has Indeedee. So, because both of our teams have Indeedee, Grimmsnarl is not looking like the greatest idea for my opponent to bring this week. In any case, let's just get straight on with it. It's probably going to be running bulky, maybe physically bulky, although I suspect this week it's more likely to run specially bulky with an... no, it's not Impish Nature. Which nature is it? Careful Nature. Just because I have Togekiss, which probably still KOs this set on a crit. But still, Grimmsnarl is going to want to run specially bulky, if it can, into my Togekiss. Next up on that team, we have Dracozolt. Dracozolt is a pretty standard mon. It could the set that I'm worried about this week is Choice Scarf, because this thing is underspeeding Togekiss without a Choice Scarf. So I expect them to try to put a Choice Scarf on it so it can deal with Togekiss. It can go first in that matchup. Dracozolt is very much the type of Pokemon that will be running max attack, max speed almost all the time. It might, and of course, as always with these sample sets, if my opponent is trying to just outspeed certain things, like if my opponent wants to just outspeed a max speed Hitmontop that they think I might bring, they can just slide this bar over, and have a good time. But I'm just throwing in the kind of general sets that I expect. I expect most of its investment to be in speed and attack. It's probably going to be Jolly. Other sets, maybe not as likely. But yeah, Hustle with Choice Scarf is it's interesting. Dracozolt really wants to Dynamax, get that Aerial Ace off, get up its Electric Terrain, that kind of thing. Get off a high horsepower, or a max Quake. But really, this thing does want to Dynamax because of its Hustle reducing its accuracy. So, but it's not the only thing that wants to Dynamax, because everything on this team wants to Dynamax, which brings me to their B tier, or their first B tier, Escavalier. Escavalier is another Pokemon that really wants to be Dynamaxing in Trick Room. It's probably going to be Shell Armor. I don't see any use for Overcoat or Swarm for my opponent this week. So, I don't see much use for Swarm in general, but Shell Armor is good against my Togekiss because then Escavalier can't be crit by the Togekiss. So, the Shell Armor is the most likely set. I think Assault Vest as well, again, to deal with the Togekiss. If this thing Dynamaxes, I think it can actually, like, through screens with Assault Vest, it can live 1 to potentially 2. I don't think 2, but potentially. If it gets off, like, a based on Drill Run, maybe. If it gets off a Max Quake, then it can maybe raise its defense or special defense enough. Ironhead, Fell Stinger, Close Combat Knockoff is the set I've got in here. It could run a stronger Bug-type move, but Fell Stinger is a bit spicy because I do have a couple Pokemon that are weak to the Bug-type. And if it can get off one of those and get a +3 attack, then it's going to be difficult to deal with, for certain. So that's the kind of thing that I'm expecting from the Scavalier. Mandibuzz, I don't get why it's in the B tier in the first place. I guess it's a Tailwind setter, but also this thing is just not a good Pokemon in general. Again, it can run Overcoat or Weak Armor. I don't think either of those is useful this week, so it's more likely to be just big Pecs for just random no defense drops. Leftovers is probably the most common Mandibuzz item. It could also run like Roselli Berry, I suppose. That's probably more likely, but honestly, there's no way to tell for certain because this Pokemon just isn't that great in this matchup especially. It's more of a bulky support or staller, but it's not great into Togekiss, to say the least. Foul Play, Knockoff, Roost, Tailwind. Like, really, Tailwind and Roost is what you expect from this thing with its stats. And Knockoff for support, Foul Play to actually deal some damage, potentially, but Mandibuzz is not a great Pokemon into my team, to say the least. I'm not really worried about it at all. Next up, we have Centiskorch, G-Max. This is another Pokemon that really wants to Dynamax, because without Dynamax, Centiskorch is going down to any Rock-type attack. Even with even with the G-Max, if it gets up the Centiferno, that's great for it. It's not doing too much damage still. It might be trapping me, but it's still going down to a Rock-type attack. Just straight up, it's going to get KO'd without a Chody Berry. Even with a Chody Berry, if my Togekiss, if I were running Crit Kiss with Ancient Power, I could take it out 50% of the time. So, Fire Lash, Leech Life, Knockoff, Protect is the kind of set that I expect from a Centiskorch. I've also run against, and this might sound crazy, no investment minus special attack Scald. Yes, that is an actual thing I prepped against, because it is the only thing that can really threaten a particular Mon that I'm bringing. It's not a good set by any means, but it is a set that my opponent could theoretically run. So, it's interesting, to say the least. Next up, we have Toxicroak. Toxicroak, I think, is actually a bit of a sleeper pick in the C tier. It's actually got quite good offenses. It's base 106 attack, base 85 speed. It's got decent bulk, not great, but decent. And so, Dry Skin might be an option. It could also be Poison Touch. I honestly am not certain what my opponent will do here, but Poison Jab with Poison Touch has like a 51% chance of poisoning, so that's pretty good. Like Poison Jab, Drain Punch, Throat Chop. It could also, in theory, run the Sludge. No, Gunk Shot. Gunk Shot, is that what I prepped against as well? Yeah, Gunk Shot over Poison Jab is an option. This thing is threatening if it has speed control and or is not being attacked. But the good thing for me is I have Togekiss, which hits it for super effective with its flying type stab, and I have Indeedee, which hits it for 4 times effective with its psychic stab. And I just have a lot of psychic attacks and other things, and I have ways to switch around. Chandelure really cannot be easily touched by Toxicroak unless it's running a dark type move, which is why I have Throat Chop on the sample set, for the record. It's just really going to be important for my opponent to be running a dark type attack on this thing to deal with my team in general. But then they have to be making predictions, etc. I think it's more likely to be adamant than it is to be not. That is to say, for it to be jolly. Like, it really loves the extra power boost. Like, this thing is meant to hit hard, and I think it's probably going to be running a focus sash, because otherwise it's just going down in one of my attacks almost always. Next we have Orucs-Oraihc. And Orucs-Oraihc is, like, it's their D tier pick. Or their first D tier pick, I should say. It's their pick that's drafted as a D tier and not a free agent. Orucs-Oraihc is not good, especially into my team. It's a dark type that's not too bulky. Like, even with Eviolite, this thing is only 60, 45, 45. It's an Intimidate mon, but I don't have too many physical attackers that this thing is going to be taking care of. So, it's not even that fast at base 74. It's not threatening too much. Like, this is a potential set for it. Earthquake, Crunch, Protect. Some coverage move. It could run Snarl in theory. But really, this thing is just not going to be a good choice for my opponent, regardless of what I bring, because I can just one-hit KO it with several of my Pokemon. Like, it's another dark type, I guess, if I'm doing expanding force stuff, but if I have a Togekiss, then Orucs-Oraihc is not going to be a good choice, basically. And then we get on to my opponent's free agents. Their first free agent is Durant from the A tier. Durant is another Pokemon that really wants to Dynamax. It's Life Orb, Hustle. You get Iron Head, X Scissor, Crunch, and Rock Slide as like your 4 basic moves that you can build around. You can also, instead of X Scissor, if you're only once going to be using a bug type move, First Impression is an option. You can run Stone Edge over Rock Slide if you're feeling bold. You can run Stomping Tantrum to get special defense boosts. This thing, unfortunately for my opponent, is 4 times weak to fire. Again, same thing as their other bug steel type, Escavalier. So it's going down to my Chandelure's fire type attacks if it's not outspeeding them. It's base 109 speed and base 109 attack, which is very strong and very fast, especially with Hustle. But really, this thing needs to survive a hit to get an attack off if I'm running what I'm running this week. So, moving on, next we have Rotom. Rotom base form, it's not great. It has very little bulk. It's base 50 HP and 77 defenses. Its attack is also not, or special attack is also not great. 91, 95, or 91 speed, 95 special attack. It's faster than the other Rotoms, but it's not great. It could run something like Thunderbolt or Volt Switch or Discharge. I've seen used in prep. Electro Web is a possibility. Other stuff like that. It could be a Helping Hand, Light Screen kind of support thing. It could be running dual screens. It gets Light Screen and Reflect. But really, this thing is not much of a threat offensively unless it's going for discharges and paralyzing me. It's just not fast enough or strong enough to have too much impact. That said, I have prepped for this mon specifically. And yeah, probably something like max speed, max special attack with a focus sash is what I would expect, but this team wants a lot of focus sashes. Next we have Indeedee male. I think if it's going to be here, it's going to be with the Choice Scarf, most likely. It could also be a Life Orb set. Indeedee male is strong. Its Psychic Surge is very good for it. With Expanding Forth, Dazzling Gleam, Hyper Voice, Coverage. the thing about this is most of its moves that it wants to click, like Expanding Force, Dazzling Gleam, Ema Hyper Voice, they're spread moves. And so Hitmontop, which normally like you wouldn't want to have out against a Psychic type in Psychic Terrain, is actually pretty decent against Indeedee if I'm giving it Wide Guard, because it just shuts down its ability to do any damage, in a sense. It could also run something like Mystical Fire. It could theoretically run Psychic to get around that, but I highly doubt that anyone runs their Indeedee with Psychic or Psyshock. This thing could be a Trick Room setter, but if my opponent wants to bring a Trick Room setter, they have a better option as their last Mon. Again, probably max speed, max special attack. I think it's more likely Modest than not, even without a Choice Scarf, just because my speed tiers kind of go Excelgor, Liepard, Emolga are really high, and DDF is my 4th fastest Pokemon somehow, because that thing has base 85 speed, but nobody ever remembers because it doesn't run speed investment. And then after that is my base 80s, and it's outspeeding all of those with a modest nature regardless. So this thing is probably going to be hitting very hard if it comes. And my opponent's final free agent from the D tier, Bronzor, which would be running Eviolite if it comes, almost for certain. I don't see a better item for it. It's a Trick Room setter. It's really slow. It's base 23 speed, which is going to be underspeeding everything. It doesn't have really any offensive stats to boast about, but it does have decent HP and good defenses, especially considering its Eviolite item. This thing can actually take quite a few hits. So something like Trick Room, it could run Expanding Force using either its own or my Psychic Terrain, Flash Cannon, Shadow Ball. Like, you could run these moves. You could also run like a Calm Mindset if you want to do that. You can run Pure Support with Light Screen Reflect again. You have a lot of options with Bronzor. Like, it's actually, in my opinion, a significantly better Pokemon than Rotom base form, just because it has that bulk that you want from a Pokemon that's going to be supportive mostly. The only problem with it is it really, because of its offensive stats, has all my friends are dead stat syndrome, in that you can just ignore it and target its partners. And yeah, could run Levitate or Heat Proof this week. I have Palisand as my ground type, and I have a bunch of fire type moves, including Chandelures, Stab Flamethrowers, which is good. Heavy Metal is never something you're going to see on a Bronzor. Just straight up never. Or really a Bronzong either, for that matter. In any case, that's my opponent's team. What am I expecting them to bring? I've prepped against a couple things, but I think the best options for my opponent are probably Grimmsnarl, Dracozolt, Trick Room with a Scavalier Bronzong, which I haven't prepped too extensively against. Toxicroak is always a really good call for my opponent. And I think they really have nothing better to bring than Centiskorch after that. The problem with my opponent's team here is... Whoop, there goes my light. The problem with my opponent's team is that they really have no great answers for a couple of my best Pokemon. So, that being said, let's go to which of those Pokemon I am going to be bringing. And we're going with... This is actually the version 7 team now. I have been changing stuff and testing and changing again, testing again, and just truly throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks with this team. At one point, I accidentally had 2 Focus Sashes on the team, so I had to change that, and that was another version. But yeah, we've got Togelcons, which is our Togekiss. It's going to be a Razor Claw Super Lux set this week, as opposed to a Scope Lens Super Lux set, which does exactly the same thing, but Razor Claw is funnier for Togekiss. We're just going to be hitting everything we can for critical hits. Air Slash, Dazzling Gleam, Heat Wave, Nasty Plot, It's a nasty plot set. I think if my opponent leads poorly into a nasty plot Togekiss, then it just gets off a nasty plot and sweeps the entire team. There's nothing my opponent can do about it, basically. Like if I can get off a nasty plot and then Dynamax, then I just don't think my opponent can stop Togekiss. Period. Full stop. Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. So then we have the EVs. It's got a bit of defense to help against Toxicroak. When it's Dynamax, it's actually... Toxicroak is so powerful that it's one-shotting with Gunk Shot if it's not Dynamaxed. And if it's like Banded or Life Orb, it could even one-shot with Poison Jab just because of Stab, and it's super strong if it's Adamant. It's got enough speed to outspeed Dracozolt by, I think, 1 point, might be 2. It's at least a point that it's going to be outspeeding that by. So that's important for the team because we kind of want to be going before that if it's not Scarf, and if it is Scarf, then we want to be going before it when it's at +1. So very important there. Yeah, next up we have Indeedee, or Inbeebe. Inbeebe is going to be running the Tanga Berry, which is not an item that you see commonly outside of Draft League, but it's one that I have used a couple times. It halves damage from super effective bug-type attacks. Originally, this thing was running a number of different items. It had Psychic Seed at one point. Right now, it's before this, it had one of the 2 Focus Sashes that the team accidentally had. But the Tanga Berry is going to be having super effective bug-type damage, and that's going to help against the potential Escavalier and the Durant on my opponent's team. Strong bug-types that probably want to use their bug-type attacks. It might survive, and I mean might survive, a Durant max Flutterby through Tanga Berry. Because Durant is just so strong. Like, legitimately, its max Steel Spike has a chance to one-hit KO this. That's how strong it is. We've got standard kind of support set. Follow Me, Helping Hand. We've got Expanding Force and Mystical Fire. Mystical Fire is to deal with the slower bug types. Specifically Escavalier or Durant if I get to +1 speed. That's what the speed investment is for the record. I have this speed investment to outspeed Durant when I'm at +1. And then I have enough special attack to do something else, and I forgot what, but there was a calc involved with this. It's probably got to do with Mystical Fire into either Durant or Escavalier. I think it probably is that it KOs in the sun after a Togekiss Max Flare. The Escavalier. If it's Dynamaxed Akaberry. That sounds right to me. The rest in max defense and some HP. Some Force Bedef. Yeah, Expanding Force is just going to be useful against anything, but especially against the Toxicroak. If that thing doesn't expect Indeedee to be going for an attack, then it can just get completely caught off guard and one-hit KO'd. So next we have Chandelure. It's my Bug Lamp. It's a Bug Lamp because my opponent has 2 bugs that are 4 times weak to the fire type attacks. It's going to be running the Choice Scarf, and that is to outspeed Durant. It's got enough speed that it also outspeeds a modest Drake or an adamant Dracozolt. I could be running Timid instead of Modest, but the Modest Nature and Flamethrower, for the record, because I initially had Heat Wave, that is to one-hit KO Dynamax Durant through Akaberry if it's got some SPDEF investment, I think. It's either that or it KOs Escavalier through Assault Vest with max HP for SPDEF. With Flamethrower. And I needed the Modest Nature to do that. Without that, I just straight up cannot guarantee a KO. It does like 90% to 105. Something like that. 106. Anyways, the rest of the investment is a bit in HP and 4 in defense and SPDEF. Dark Pulse is for opposing Indeedee. Psychic is for opposing what you might call it. Toxicroak. Again, this thing can deal with the Toxicroak, which could very well not expect Psychic on a Chandelure. Moving on, we have Hitmontop. Hitmontop is there for Intimidate support. Something you might have noticed about my opponent's team is that they have exactly 2 special attackers, not counting Bronzor, because Bronzor is not an attacker in general. And those are Indeedee and Rotom, so everything else on the team is physical, and they have nothing that's defiant, nothing that's competitive. So Intimidate can really help against all of the offensive threats. Durant, Dracozolt, Escavalier especially. And, of course, Centiskorch. Toxicroak as well. Fake Out is good if I am out of Psychic Terrain. Wide Guard is good if I'm in Psychic Terrain, because Indeedee Male, again, really likes its spread moves. Close Combat is just for stab, and Stone Edge is to help deal with Centiskorch, because it can actually deal some massive damage even without investment, and it's likely to crit even. So it's very useful for that. I've got this speed investment to deal with, like, I think it was Krokorok that I just wanted to, like, outspeed just a little bit. Does that make sense? Yeah, that if my opponent isn't running speed on Krokorok, then I can outspeed that. If they're not running too much speed on a Centiskorch, I can outspeed that as well by a couple points. And then, yeah, just max HP and a good amount of special defense to try to deal with Indeedee better. It's probably not dealing with Indeedee all that well regardless, but it can, I think, live an Expanding Force spread with this defensive spread. So we've just got the rest in 4 attack, 4 defense, because I didn't need an extra point here for that calc. And my 5th Mon, and my 6th Mon are Excelgor and Palossand. We've got Bugsnack and Shovel as our nicknames there. Excelgor is going to be Unburdened Focus Sash. It's got to be the Focus Sash this week, because otherwise it doesn't survive a hit. And that's going to be a common theme when I do use Excelgor. Either it's going to be Focus Sash so it can survive a hit, or I want it to not survive a hit. I would really rather it survive a hit this week in particular. We've got Protect, because if I'm leading Excelgor Palossand and my opponent leads a Mon with Fake Out, I really want to be able to protect Excelgor in that scenario, so I can actually get the Water Shuriken off the next turn. Of course, Water Shuriken, Acid Spray, Yawn. This is basically exactly the same as the set that I had in the team introduction video, which if you haven't seen, and you want to learn about the rest of my team, highly recommend doing that. This is pretty much exactly that same set. We've got Protect instead of something else, I think. We don't need max speed. This speed is enough to outspeed something at +1, but I don't remember what. It'll be outspeeding everything on their team because it's base 145 speed. Might have been Scarf Dracozolt that I wanted to outspeed. In any case, I've got the rest in max HP and a bit of defense just to maybe tank a hit without revealing Focus Sash. Maybe. Who knows? But yeah, Water Shuriken is just to activate the weakness policy, and Acid Spray is to lower SpDef by 2 stages, so I can do more damage with all of my Pokemon because I have 5 special attackers here and a Hitmontop. And moving on to that last special attacker, it's Palisand Shovel. It's got the weakness policy this week, as it always will when I'm running it with Excelgor, pretty much. Although, like, in theory, I could run something like Absorb Bulb, I think. Is that right? Is that the right item? Am I remembering that correctly? Yeah, in theory, I could run Absorb Bulb. But it's more likely that I'm going to be running Water Compaction Weakness Policy. The idea is to get to +6 defense, get off 3 max Quakes, and then just shore up all the damage off, as it were, and become unkillable. In practice, this only failed when I wasn't able to keep another Pokemon on the field to get take some heat off Palisand, and or when I got frozen by an Ice Punch once. That was fun. I did immediately thaw out both times, though, which was even more fun. Earth Power, Shadow Ball is my dual stab. Ancient Power is there largely to deal with Centiskorch, but also because in max I can shore up for 2/3, or I can use it to make my shore ups after max go for 2/3, and then naturally Earth Power is going to raise my defense. Shadow Ball is going to lower. The other use for Ancient Power, of course, is to get the Omni boosts, because you always love a good Omni boost from Ancient Power. And I did get one in practice, which was nice. Really, I don't need anything other than Ancient Power, Earth Power, Shadow Ball to deal with pretty much everything on this team. Indeedee is really the only thing that has a good chance to take me out. Rotom, if it's got Shadow Ball, and it comes, which is, like, first of all, unlikely that Rotom gets brought to the match. Second of all, unlikely that it has Shadow Ball if it does, because it's more likely to be supportive with a lot of electric attacks. But yeah, that's the idea with Palisand. If I had to predict what my leads are going to be, the things that I've prepped most are leading Indeedee Togekiss, just clicking Follow Me and either Dynamaxing turn 1 or Nasty Plotting. I've also done a lot of Excelgor Palisand matches just to get ready for that, because that is the other most likely thing that I can do. It's just a really strong mode, and my opponent hasn't got many great ways to deal with it, as long as I play smartly, at least. And then, yeah, I can also lead these two. I can lead Indeedee and Chandelure. I can lead Hitmontop Chandelure. I can lead Hitmontop Togekiss. I can lead Excelgor Togekiss, which is a crazy lead, but it does immediately take something out with an Acid Spray and a max move. So, yeah, my opponent basically has to play well and get lucky to win this week. They need to really just make all the right calls, because Togekiss is just a monster into that team, and Palisand is another monster, and so I'm really confident in my ability to do well, and hopefully I can win. And that match is going to be starting fairly soon, I suppose. So until then, thanks for watching. Bye!